Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at some insanely fun battles in the Remix Cup. This trainer has a Great League Rayquaza, and they're pairing it up with a Shadow Palkia for some high-octane, very glassy action. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Team Insync, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, it goes without saying, this is absolutely not a team you should run if you care about your elo. But against all odds, by pairing up those two with a Toxapex, this trainer was able to go on a pretty nice run. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Game number 1, Toxapex is going to be staring down Magcargo. A quick switch to Rayquaza. Opponent, despite leading, Magcargo doesn't have a response to a Dragon type, so Rayquaza is going to stay in here, land the Breaking Swipe, and apply an attack drop as well. Opponent is going to be able to debuff right back with the Rock Tomb. Rayquaza will outpace. They're forced to switch out into Grumpig. They definitely could have sent in Grumpig right away and probably been pretty okay, but I guess they wanted to apply that debuff first. Grumpig can just fire off Dynamic Punch to pick up the knockout here. Rayquaza is going to end up investing a shield, and Rayquaza is going to bank a move and send in Toxapex. I honestly like this play, because this way you get to reset that Rock Tomb attack debuff, and charge attacks from Grumpig don't hit very hard onto the Toxapex. Toxapex is looking for a farm down, but the Grumpig able to hang on. Last second charge attack is reached, just a Dynamic Punch, so it's not going to do a lot. In comes Magcargo. Magcargo going to be hit with the Brine. Brine easily going to be picking up the knockout here. And now the opponent with 2 shields in the back is going to need a sweep from their Primeape. Now Primeape, very strong Pokemon, but unfortunately for Primeape, it's going to potentially be debuffed here by this Breaking Swipe. The Breaking Swipe is going to be shielded. The debuff comes through. They get the Karate Chop down, but at -1, it's not nearly as strong in terms of attack as it typically would be. In comes the Shadow Palkia. These Dragon Breaths absolutely annihilating Primeape. Primeape fires off the Ice Punch. That does big damage. They're now going to fire off a Rage Fist. Double Rage Fist probably would have been better, but either way, they're still not taking home a win, as Toxapex will be able to get a Poison Jab farm down and take game 1. Tough lead in game number 2, leading Toxapex into Shadow Dusknoir. This is going to force a safe switch to Rayquaza, but it's Astonish, and in 4 Astonishes, the glassy Rayquaza already well below half HP. It is going to be the Shadow Punch coming out from the opponent. Opponent now going to send in a Psycho Cut Medicham, as the Breaking Swipe is going to connect. No Breaking Swipe debuff, unfortunately. Opponent will easily be able to pick up the knockout with the Ice Punch, and if you're already down 1 shield, you can't really afford to go down a second. So now, in comes the Toxapex. The opponent actually went for a Dynamic Punch there, which is a bit odd. Maybe their Dynamic Punch Psychic. Usually Psycho Cut would be on Dynamic Punch Ice Punch, but this one is actually on Psychic, as Psychic lands, dealing big damage into the Toxapex, and this game already looks like a very difficult one to win. In comes Shadow Palkia in the back. Opponent running Machamp. That is not a Pokemon I was expecting to see here whatsoever. Machamp is going to be firing off the Cross Chop. Palkia needs to commit to a farm down. Gets the farm down. Maybe there's a chance. There's so much energy available to this Palkia. Palkia firing off the first of the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Going for Aqua Tail number 2 as the Astonish is going to connect. This Palkia just put in so much work in the endgame. The opponent throwing on alignment here. They're going to give an entire free Poison Jab. Can Toxapex outpace? Yes, it can. Toxapex gets there. That game looked completely doomed, but thanks to the Shadow Palkia, it's going to turn into a win. Moving to the next match, Toxapex is staring down actually a very scary lead as it's met with Aurorus. Now, even though Toxapex is a water type and Aurorus has a water weakness, this is by no means a comfortable matchup, as Aurorus gets to continually ramp up its attack with each Meteor Beam, and on top of that, the opponent's actually going to make a devastating catch, catching the Brine onto Shadow Feraligatr. Shadow Feraligatr will swiftly be answered with Rayquaza. Opponent is going to be firing off their Hydro Cannon, and even a resisted Hydro Cannon would do so much damage that Rayquaza has to shield and fully farm down. Aurorus is going to be hitting for double super effective damage when it re-hits the field here. Rayquaza is going to build up to the back-to-back Breaking Swipes and look to continue to apply pressure onto the opponent. Opponent is going to shield the first. Rayquaza does throw one more Dragon Tail. I was a bit worried that the Powder Snows would KO, but Rayquaza is able to hang on. Aggressive switch to the Shadow Palkia. Palkia's got a no shield, and this is going to hurt. Weather Ball does big damage in the back, is a Shadow Annihilate, and Shadow Annihilate is going to be taking some pretty significant damage here, so the opponent is forced to commit the shield. But this Annihilate's health is going to be a problem. This is not a range where Brine will knock out. Potentially after some poison jabs, then Brine could KO, but we're still not quite there. Firing off the Brine, hoping this is going to be enough to knock out the opponent, rapidly approaching out of the Rage Fist. It does not KO, but the catch onto the 1 HP Rayquaza, and that is going to save the Toxapex. It farms down Annihilate. In comes Aurorus. It's a race to the move. Aurorus was on their 5 cycle. They do not take the win. What a game. I thought there was no way that was going to end in victory, but Team Instinct able to fight back and secure the win. Toxapex into Medicham in the next match, but the opponent is actually going to safe switch out into Credilli. Credilli actually over farms to throw on alignment, so a mistake from the opponent there. They are going to fire off the Grass Knot. We're going to see, unfortunately, a timing error from this Toxapex. This Toxapex, by the way, actually running Gunk Shot, so it is not running the standard Sludge Wave there. And now we're going to see the opponent take big damage, and they're going to return fire with another Grass Knot. In comes Rayquaza. Rayquaza able to get a nice Dragon Tail farm down, and now with a bit of an energy head start, if the Medicham hits the field, then Rayquaza can look to outpace. But that's not a Medicham. It's going to be a Shadow Blastoise. Rollout is hitting for super effective damage. Breaking Swipe is going to be shielded. We do not see a debuff. This Rayquaza is getting melted by these rollouts. Rollout has never looked so powerful, and we're going to see Rayquaza play to the charge attack priority tie, and that is very, very nice, as now the Blastoise is stuck throwing this energy. And then you can just save the shield for the Shadow Palkia. Shadow Palkia is going to hit the field. Opponent staying in with the Blastoise. They're getting farmed down. And this Medicham is about to have a truly terrible day in the Go Battle League, as there are no Protect Shields remaining. This is a Shadow Palkia, and it is getting to that Draco Meteor. Shadow Palkia charging up, not even hitting all the bubbles, and it still KOs, and that's a good game. We move to the next match, leading into an Arctibax with Toxapex. So overall, not a bad spot to be as the Toxapex. This is definitely a situation when you miss the consistency of Sludge Wave, as Gunk Shot is just really big overkill here. We now see a switch to Rayquaza, and Rayquaza takes so much damage. 3/4 of the Rayquaza gone in a split second. Out comes Grumpig. Grumpig going to be immediately met with the Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe is going to be shielded. Grumpig does get debuffed, and that does allow a little bit of extra damage to land from that Rayquaza. In comes the Shadow Palkia. Even though this is a debuff Dynamic Punch, oh, they actually go for a Shadow Ball there. It's still going to do way too much damage. Shadow Palkia, not wanting to give up the final shield, will now fire off the Aqua Tail. Opponent is going to let it go, and they're putting all their hopes and dreams on the back of their final Pokemon, which is revealed to be Dusclops. Dusclops is very bulky and also is pretty spammy as well, but we're going to see an Aqua Tail banked on the Palkia and a switch into Toxapex. Perfect charge attack timing here from the Toxapex. Toxapex never going to do much damage with Brine, but this is where Dusclops' lack of damage is going to be extremely apparent, as the opponent just can't ever really pick up a knockout here. They can't ever shield because the Aqua Tail from the Shadow Palkia would do more, and they're just going to get farmed down at this rate. The Shadow Punch is going to connect. Dusclops doing what it can, but it just can never do any kind of damage. Dusclops, with literally 1 HP remaining, takes the KO, but Palkia, one quick Dragon Breath, is going to take the win. We move to the next match, and it's going to be Toxapex staring down a non-Shadow Pidgeot. Non-Shadow Pidgeot, a bit of a surprise, but we will see a switch now into Rayquaza. Opponent going to respond with a Dugong. Oh no, this is basically worst case scenario. Rayquaza is going to get deleted. That poor Rayquaza, able to fire off one Breaking Swipe. But those Ice Shards were absolutely criminal. Back in comes the Toxapex. Toxapex, the good news is, has a good matchup into Dugong, because 2 drill runs are not enough to knock out here. But again, it's a bit uncomfortable where you don't have access to Sludge Waves. You're kind of forced to try and farm it into a range where you can knock out with a Brine. Opponent tries to go for a catch. They're sending an Arctibax, going for the Gunk Shot, and the Gunk Shot gets shielded. And that's just going to be game over. There just isn't a way to win this now, unfortunately. The Arctibax is going to be firing off energy. They probably just Icy Wind here, I would imagine. and we are going to see another charge move reached, and unfortunately this is going to be a loss for the team. There's just not a way forward. The Arctibax was just too much to handle. In comes the Dugong. Dugong immediately met with the Aqua Tail. Dugong is going to end up shielding. In comes the Pidgeot, and we will see our battler resign the match. Moving to the next game, we've got the Battle of the Water Poisons. Toxapex into Shadow Tentacruel. Immediate safe switch into Rayquaza. Rayquaza striking first with a Breaking Swipe. Shadow Tentacruel, not a particularly bulky Pokemon, so we will see a shield. And we do see an attack drop from that Breaking Swipe. Rayquaza going to be committing the shield as Tentacruel is going to go for an Acid Spray. They're sending in a Rangaroo, and a Rangaroo does not get the farm down. Even despite the lower defense, Rayquaza was barely able to hang on, and that Breaking Swipe does really nice damage. You're forced to bring Toxapex into the Confusion User just because you can't afford to take the brutal swings on Palkia, but that's still fine because Toxapex is very bulky. The opponent will actually go for a Trailblaze there. Trailblaze now ramping up their damage, and we will see Brine launched at the Oranguru. Only one shield left for the opponent. They're unlikely to use it here. They're just going to let Oranguru go, and it's going to be Drifblim in the back. Thank goodness it is a Hex Drifblim, because Astonishes would be deleting Palkia, but Palkia is going to be able to hang on here. Palkia unfortunately now debuffed. In comes the Tentacruel. Tentacruel makes the Acid Spray. Will Acid Spray be enough to knock out here? Acid Spray, it does KO, and that is really unfortunate. In comes the Toxapex. Toxapex will get a full farm down. In comes the Drifblim, but unfortunately Drifblim will be able to take this game, as Drifblim can very comfortably just shield and make it to a Shadow Ball. There's the Shadow Ball from the Drifblim. Yeah, and unfortunately this one will be a loss. Shadow Ball connects. Hex, I mean, it meant that the Palkia wasn't farmed down, but unfortunately it did also mean that the Drifblim was able to get to these charge moves a lot faster. We see a pretty interesting lead and save swap from the opponent, leading a Dragonite into the Toxapex, and they save switch into a Piloswine. Now, Piloswine, a pretty bad Pokemon for the backline to see, all things considered, so I don't mind staying in here with Toxapex and just forcing them to connect with a high horsepower. That is going to be the high horsepower. That's some pretty big damage. Opponent is going to play to the CMP tie, looking to deny energy with an Icicle Spear, but the Icicle Spear does not KO. The Toxapex hangs on, and that is an incredibly good turn of events. We now see an undercharge and a switch to Palkia. Opponent sends in the Dragonite, but with the energy advantage, Palkia is going to get to the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail into the Dragonite. Dragonite shields, and now just one Dragon Tail from Rayquaza, and Dragonite's gone. Rayquaza's in the 2-0 shield. It just has to hope that it's not something with fast move pressure. It's going to be a Dunsparce, and Dunsparce will immediately be hit with the Breaking Swipe, not committing to the Dragon Ascent, instead fishing for the debuff, gets the debuff, and that should lock down a win. Rayquaza, still taking so much damage from these debuffed rollouts, is going to shield. We see a simultaneous switch in there, predicting the opponent would try and go for a snipe, and the opponent is going to resign the match rather than let their Dunsparce lose to a Rayquaza. We've actually got a mirror here. Mirror leads, leading Toxapex into Toxapex. Aggressive switch out here. Opponent now going to send in a Jumpluff. Oh, I was hoping they were going to commit to the Dragon Ascent, but I guess they would get outpaced. We are going to see a debuff come through, and Rayquaza actually committing a shield in this matchup, so Rayquaza looking to try and make a play for swap. I think in doing so, it could potentially make the opposing Toxapex a real issue, as the opponent is actually going to let this go. But they don't bring in the Toxapex. Instead, they bring in a Furret, and Furret is now going to be hit with a Breaking Swipe. I'm pretty surprised by this play pattern from the opponent. Furret takes pretty significant damage, but I think the issue is how do you get through the opposing Toxapex? Is this Furret is going to get some pretty nice damage into Team Instinct's Toxapex, and that is going to make life quite challenging. Furret is going to win the CMP tie here, and this is very valuable chip damage. We're going to see a second Trailblaze, so they are really boosting up, and Toxapex is going to go for a full undercharge. The opponent will actually end up committing the shield here. Furret does get fully farmed down. Typically, as Furret, the play pattern you want to go for there is going to be going for a Trailblaze and then going for Swifts after. Since they went for the double Trailblaze, they weren't able to make a third move. But unfortunately, even with that opponent misplay in this particular game, this game is still going to end up being a loss. Palkia Aqua Tail is going to be shielded by the opponent, but they can just go for a Brine and a farm down. Brine is double resisted, but it still does enough with the poison jabs. And this is a situation where with Sludge Wave, this could be a win, but unfortunately, Gunk Shot is just a very expensive charge attack to get to, so the Brine will not KO, and unfortunately, this game is going to end up being a loss, but sometimes that does happen when you are running more fun picks like the Rayquaza and the Shadow Palkia. Hopping into the final match, let's see if we can get this one as a win. Furret lead, aggressive safe switch into Rayquaza, and Rayquaza already taking a ton of damage from the Sucker Punches. Furret is going to be firing off the Swift. We will see one Dragon Tail and a Breaking Swipe as Rayquaza looks to land some meaningful damage. Furret is going to no shield. Furret, oh no, they are able to hang on, and Rayquaza's double shielding. All shields in the match gone instantly. Opponent now going to send in Pidgeot. Pidgeot's going to take some pretty significant damage here from the Breaking Swipe, and they do. Quick switch back into the Toxapex. Toxapex farming up. Brave Bird is going to do so much here. Toxapex can survive this, but this is a Shadow Brave Bird, and Toxapex loses a lot of its HP. In the back is going to be Emolga, and Emolga with a 2-0 shield advantage. This is looking like a tough game to win. Emolga actually does not get the farm down here. We see another brine is reached. This brine is going to be no shielded. Maybe if you can get a catch, bring in the Palkia, try and catch on Rayquaza or something like that. In comes the Palkia. There's the catch attempt. Rayquaza farming. Opponent transfers the Dragon Tail. In comes Emolga. Is it one Dragon Breath range? Yes, it is. The opponent had the acrobatics, but they do not get the charge move because it takes one turn to click your charge move, and the Dragon Breath is able to snipe down Emolga. All in all, this was an incredibly fun team. As I mentioned at the start, it goes without saying, this is absolutely not a team for climbing. It's a trainer running some great league eligible legendaries and just looking to have some fun. They mentioned in the notes that they did go shockingly positive with the team. I believe they went up like 150 elo over the battles that they ran with it. But it just goes to show that sometimes as you throw Pokemon that people haven't seen before, they don't really know the counts. They don't necessarily know how much damage the moves can do. You can kind of catch them off guard and force them into making some misplays. So overall, I really wish that I did have a Great League Rayquaza. I did try, I think, one trade for it in the past, and it ended up rolling lucky, which is really tough. And the issue is, as the Great League Rayquazas from research get older and older, there's going to be a greater and greater chance of them being lucky. So I think at this point, personally, I'm probably stuck holding off until they do add Shadow Rayquaza at some point, because Shadow Rayquaza, then I could actually have a Great League Rayquaza. It'd be even glassier than a regular Rayquaza, but I would at least have one, because while it's not a good Pokemon, it's a very fun Pokemon, and I really like getting to use very fun Pokemon, and it's very good to see the Shadow Palkia back as well. Shadow Palkia, of course, I believe was Color Cup in the past. The Shadow Palkia was an absolute demon in, and it's really fun to see Shadow Palkia getting to absolutely shred through teams once again. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.